So pretty much how this session is going to go, right? I got a lot of questions in regards to how I utilize the ThinkorSwim scanner. So first and foremost, we're just going to go ahead and kind of populate that screen right now. Um, and these are the two main scanners that I shared with you guys, and I utilize them almost every single day. I like to sort, so the one on the left and the one on the right are two distinctive servers, but I think they work very, very well off of each other. The scanner on the left that I shared, and I'm going to share these again towards the end of this session, but I do think they are pinned somewhere in trading chat, and if not, I can reshare them again, that's no problem. But the scanner on the left, what it's doing is it's taking into account um, unusual open interest, unusual volume, and then it's also taking contracts that are expiring within 1 to 2 weeks, I believe. And it's finding those names that are kind of getting positioned for some strong option flow, or not just option flow in general, but just really good options positioning. So maybe there's an influx of calls, puts. I don't really know if it dictates which one is getting precedent over the other, but it does give you some nice, I guess, names or individual names that are kind of getting that kind of option positioning and then the decent volume as well. And so I like to sort it by net change, and then I pair it with the full time frame continuity scanner because remember, when something has momentum, it's gonna continue to run, right? If it has momentum, it will continue to have momentum until proven otherwise. Because I repeat this a lot, and I think it's very important that you guys have this like drilled down into your memory that the market is an auction. And in this auction, it is looking for a set of buyers and sellers every single day. So the reason I sort the scanner by net change is because I want to see where those aggressors are, right? So when we scanned this the other day, right, Costco had a really good day on Friday, right? Plus 15 $15 move. That's kind of nuts. So I want to be able to know and be prepared for that. So that's the reason why I really enjoy the scanners because I sort it by net change and then I like to kind of go through the list and see which ones are doing really well, which ones are starting to turn, which ones are looking like they're, in the midst of going into some form of expansion. It just really depends on what the chart is telling me. And now the reason I also use the full time frame continuity because remember what we said at the beginning when we are in an auction and we're looking for the aggressors, if all of my time frames are aligned, if both of these names pop up, what do you think I'm going to do? What do you think I'm going to do? Yeah, right. So I'm going to look for some form of entry. So like a calm is down here. It's also on full time frame continuity. So that's definitely a name that would pique my interest, right? And then where was the other one? Baba. You guys know the reason we traded Baba was mainly because it popped up on here and I liked what I saw on the chart. And this was also full time frame continuity. At the time it was on here, but it's not anymore. But when it was, right, I'm looking for those kinds of alignments. Now, it doesn't always have to correlate with this list, but if it's on here, that's an added bonus for me. But what I'll do is I'll have this out sorted by net change. Oops. Someone's got a hot mic. I think that was Vincent. So I'll sort it by net change. And what I'm doing on an intraday basis, right, is I'm going to have that set up. So let's say we were looking at Costco on Friday, right? And what I do is every single day, I have the daily setup on the bottom right, the 4 hour setup on the top right, hourly on the top left, and then this usually is the 30 minutes, sorry. And the reason I use 30 and hourly is because if I'm looking for some form of day trade, right, my entry is usually going to come within one of those. So when all those time frames kind of align and I see a proper entry, for example, if we're looking at Costco, excuse me, we have a really clean setup here that displaces through, right? All these lows get taken out. All these lows get taken out. But then price, rather than continuing the displacement, where do we displace back up, right? So what do we get? coming into Friday, this is kind of just how I would analyze things on a day-to-day basis, right? Whoops. Coming into Friday, we got a really nice 2B reclaim, right? And what do we know to be true about setups like this? This is just kind of like, let's say this was kind of in a real life perspective when we were actually trading Friday. This is kind of what I would do and go about it. So if we had all this consolidation, price broke through it, and now we're displacing back through it based off of Thursday's close and price is pushing back up, what do we think price is wanting to do now? Trade to the upside. Yeah, right? Because when you have something like this, blah blah blah, price is breaking through. If you break under it, should should you not, when you come back into test this area up here, because of how strong it was support at one point, but then buyers fail to execute, should we not get this? Is this not the ideal scenario if we're basing this off of previous context, right? So then why does price do this? Why do we reclaim it? And so it's just things like that, right? Like when I mean, I'm not trying to chart Costco and do all that. So like there's a lot of momentum for this to run higher now, right? We are at the 618, could push up higher. But the thing is, what I'm trying to get across is I'm looking at all these time frames and it's literally within like 5 minute spam intervals. So if I see something on the scanner and I'm like, oh wait, you know, something looks different here, um, I'm gonna go back and chart it the same way I just charted Costco, but it's within 5 to 10 minute intervals. And I'm just going scrolling through this, like I'll go through this all day long. And something that I've also kind of been back testing is I'm using this strength meter. I don't know how reliable it is just yet, but it's a handy little tool on ThinkorSwim that I have on that volume slash options positioning scanner that if it has like just like the orange bars, it's kind of in a, like it says right here, price change over 3 weeks. Hasn't really done much, right? So my main focus is going to be on names that are kind of within the orange still, because I want to capture them when they do turn into a strong price change over 3 weeks. And that's also the reason why whenever I see something pop up on here, I'm usually only doing 1 to 2 week expiration. And it's also relative as to what is showing on the charts, right? So if we were taking this approach and we were doing like a real life scenario, I would go in and, I mean, UPST looks really good. I would go in and maybe do a COM, right? So let's say we're trading a COM right now. Let's say it's like Friday or whatever. A COM's got a really nice setup. So this is kind of how I would take the approach. I would look at the daily. You have a nice cup and handle that's breaking out. Does look like we came into some supply up here. So this would kind of be my trigger for it to continue to go higher. I would also invert the chart to make sure nothing unusual is there. I would also look at the weekly, right? You did go outside week, so there could be a potential for continuation if you hold and just get that continuation, right? Um, but then again, this is really much all I'm doing. It's not like anything crazy. There's no secret sauce really. You have a really nice inside 4 hour. Now you are coming into this supply range here that did reject price and cause it to gap down. So it's going to be very important for price to do what? What do we want to see if this is going to continue to run? Because I do see a nice liquidity target up here. Yeah, it does. Who said that? Hey, oh, there you go, Craig. Oh, it's a little hard to recognize you, but yeah, that's correct, right? So the last time we were here, price did not like that, right? So if this narrative is going to change, right? So far so good. We have a really nice inside 4 hour, but now you kind of want to utilize the new structure we have, right? So you got the higher lows, higher highs. Maybe if it does dig down into the gap, I don't know if it will just yet because we also have what? What do we have now to work off of? Whoops. Right now we have a really nice breaker to keep us above. So price could kind of stall here before trying to go higher as well. So inside 4 hour, what Craig said, because this is the last place price rejected, we now want to push above, maybe into that gap, and then use that as support to continue the climb higher. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, what are we at risk again up here? Relative to what price did before, what are we at risk again if we cannot invert it? Yep, we are at risk of selling and potentially coming back into the gap if this zone here does not hold. Because once again, um, just some common market structure theory for everyone. When you do have those sets of higher highs and higher lows, what do you notice a lot of the times happens when you get those retracements? What tends to happen? And I'm going off tangent here, but this is very important. What do you see at every higher low and higher high? Yeah, who was active here versus who is active here? Who was active over here on the left when price? Yeah, sellers, right? And then when you displace through them, who becomes active then? Yeah, exactly. So you want to keep that into perspective every time you're trading and you're looking at structure as well, because this happens a lot of times. Because think about it like this: you came into a point of interest where sellers became the aggressors and they brought us down. But then you aggressively push through, right? You get that displacement where we know because of how fast price traveled through into new highs, we are going to have unfilled orders within a specific region. And coincidentally enough, that unfilled region lies where those sellers were active. And it happens a lot more than you guys think. So when price comes back up, if we're coming back up into an area where there's a lot of unfilled orders relative to how fast price moved, those orders were not filled properly. You had sellers once there. What do you think they're going to become? Right? They become buyers. And then the same thing can be said vice versa, right? It's the same concept on both ends. Now, I'm not saying this happens 100% of the time, but I am saying that this happens a lot more frequently than not. So definitely something to keep an eye on and make sure you guys pay attention to moving forward, right? So kind of with this example here, that's why we highlighted this region is because this is the last place price broke down. So if we do come back and test it, you can kind of already see like if we drill down into let's say the 30 minute, you can kind of see where price held, right? So the 30 minute looks actually really nice because look at this zone. You see what I mean? When we gapped up, why did price come down here and not further down, right? Why did it hold where it held? And that's relative to context of price. What did price do? Where did price come from? What is price likely to do? Now we're just stuck within this general zone. And when we go back to the 4 hour, we know why, because that was the last supply zone that gapped us down and gave us that ultimately really large sell. And I don't know why it's not loading. Oh, there we go. But we also have this now. So we now want to try and correlate this HVN with bullish structure, and we do want to see this develop into that gap. Okay, so does this make sense? I'm not trying to like stray away from the overall concept of today's class. I'm just kind of giving you guys a breakdown of like what I would do on a hour to hour basis if I did see something did if I did see something I liked from the scanner. Like that's how I would go about it. And that's why I have my charts always opened up this way, the daily, 4 hour, hourly, and 30 minute. Because if you're just stuck on the daily, there's going to be a lot of things you miss on those lower time frames. Because something you guys might not know yet, or maybe getting familiar with still, is a lot of my entries come from the hourlies. And almost every single time you will see me take something from the hourlies. Because think about it like this, right? I know you strat traders trade like two ups, two downs off of higher time frame candles like the daily and weekly. But when that weekly is forming, you're not seeing any of this, right? All this moves here, you're not seeing until the weekly closes. So and nothing against strats. Strats amazing, amazing concept. But I'm just saying a lot of my entries come from these hourlies because it acts like a domino effect, right? It lingers. The 30 minute will trigger the hourly. The hourly will trigger the 2 hour. The 2 hour will trigger the 4 hour. The 4 hour triggers the daily. The daily triggers the weekly, weekly triggers the monthly, so on and so forth, and then you get to the quarter. And there's a reason that those time frames take longer to develop. So when people take trades off the weekly, monthly, quarter, they're taking like a month to 2, 3 months out, right? Because it's all relative to the time frame you're taking. But a lot of the times you will find an earlier entry in the hourlies. And then the rest acts as a domino effect. And that is why, dun dun dun, drum roll please, we use full time frame continuity. Because if everything's in alignment, then we know which direction price is likely to go. So that's why I think both of these scanners are so unique when they're paired together. Does anybody have any questions on these scanners so far? And did that all make sense? I know it was a lot, so if I overwhelmed anybody, please let me know. Yeah. No, so yeah, that's a good question. So it's just scanning for specific criteria. And I'm usually like this list can go on for a long time, but I'm usually mainly focused on like the first 20 or so that pop up. Like I only have this window here and whatever's on this main page is the only thing I'm looking at. I'm not going here and scrolling through everything because it's gonna spit out an insane amount of names. So I'm literally only focusing on the ones that have really nice net change. Because there's going to be a lot of things that have, really good net change through every single day. But the ones that pop up on here are the ones that I'm going to pay attention to. So the first, what's this, three? The first 20 or so is the only ones I'm paying attention to. I'm not scrolling here and going through every single one. Yeah, I'll peek and maybe see, but if they're the main ones that are popping up, it's because they have the better net change. So I want to see if they get continuation or have the ability to continue. Especially on the ones that start to barely pop up on the net change, maybe they're going to get some follow through. And remember when we were talking about Carvana, right? It's back on the list. So this is definitely something that's piquing my interest again. But yeah, does that make sense? I'm not scrolling through every single one. I'm literally just looking for the ones that have like 1.5 plus net change, and that's it. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, they are. And I also shared the actual scanner as well. I can share it again. Yeah. Yeah, and then you can also replicate this on Finviz or something. It's not like a crazy scanner, man. It really isn't. I just enjoy using it because I've had pretty good success with it so far. But it's again, it's also go ahead. Yeah, that's good, man. That makes me happy to hear. And then again, remember we're aligning it with the full time frame continuity. I think this one holds a lot more precedent than this one, than the actual new scan. I think the full time frame continuity list holds a lot more. Even though, right, the net change isn't great. What I'm doing here is I'm sorting that one by volume. So the full time frame continuity is being sorted by volume, everyone. I want you to understand that. Because if all the time frames are aligned, I want to know where majority of that volume is. So on the names that have, that full time frame continuity, where the hourly, daily, and weekly are all aligning, so on and so forth, I want to know which ones of these are getting more volume because I know those are the ones that are going to probably get a lot more inflow. And we know because if we go back and look at Palantir, right, you have 88 million, I think. So if we go back and look at Palantir, I mean, Palantir had just an amazing day, right? Looking at the daily. Sorry, I just have I chart so much, guys. I'm sorry. I just have a bunch of notes on everything. But yeah, I mean, given the day this had, you hold on. This is actually an important close. Look at where the weekly closed. We had this marked out. Is this an important weekly close? Yes or no? It is, yes. Why is it why is this actually an important weekly close? Tell me. Okay, close outside, but what else? Relative. Remember, it's context of price. Yep, good displacement on the weekly, but context of price. Why is this zone marked out? What did price do every time we entered it? Did someone say something? I'm sorry? There you go. I had trouble hearing the other person, but yes, you closed above resistance. If we take out this pivot here, failed to close above. If we take this one, we closed above both of those higher time frame pivots that caused what? Massive rejections every single time. So Palantir is definitely a top watch going into next week. You might think, oh, but we've already done majority of the move in 1 week. Okay, but did it stop it here? 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 Right? And look at this one. When we had a bunch of inflow here, displays through, this still continued. So there could be a scenario now where what do we want to see now? If we got a weekly close above that higher time frame resistance, what is something we want to see on Palantir? Do we want to see something like this and head into the gap? Do we want to see this reject, come back down? What do we want to utilize now in regards to context of price now that we're up here? We want to use, do we want to use this resistance as support or do we want to just melt right through it again? Right? We want to use it as support, correct. So, and that's just one thing I would look for, right? So Palantir should be at the top of everyone's list if it ever does pull back or it just continues because we have a gap on the weekly chart, guys. 31.92. And while we are pushing into conflicts, we know that gap downs reject price, and this has not been filled since 2021. And relative to, yeah, go ahead. Are you asking like, is there a way to know what it's gonna do right off the bat? Well, yeah, yeah. So well, that's the thing. Like, we don't know what price is gonna do ultimately, but we can build context of price. We can build a blueprint, and that's why we're covering this because we're saying this same region where price projected every single time, every weekly close up here failed. But now we got a weekly close above all of those pivot rejections. So in my case, in this approach, I would like to now flip. So where we had all this rejection occur, I would like to utilize it in our favor and maybe get like a small retracement that then potentially pushes price higher into the gap. So while I don't know if we get just straight continuation or if we get a little bit of reset before higher, but the way things closed, I do anticipate price does try to fill that gap sooner rather than later. So, but I don't know if it's going to just go straight up or if it's going to come down, build out a little bit, and then go. But based off of the structure of price, I anticipate that the gap does get filled. But I don't know if it does it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Nobody knows that. Does that help? But we're able to build context. And that's the thing, right? You want to look at things, you want to build confluence, and you want to try to understand the structure of price. What is price doing? Where did price come from? And where is price likely to go? And so when you're building all of these different scenarios and you're looking at all of your different time frames, and they all kind of line up in one way or another. Again, you don't want to just have one general bias because that will kill you, but you want to build those if then statements. If this, then that, if this, then that, right? Everything should be taken in a, you know, more of like a probability logical sense. You don't want to just be like, oh, we had an outside week, well, let's just go up. No, you want to be able to build the context off of the other time frames. You don't want to just say, oh, outside week, let's keep going up. Like you have to be ready. Like what if you take the trigger Like what if it takes the trigger? Sorry. What if you get the trigger and then it digs down? What are you going to do down here? Are you going to panic and then it goes back up? Like what if you get something like that? What are you going to do when it pulls back? But if you take into consideration everything that you've just looked at and kind of the blueprint you created, right? And you give yourself time and if you did your homework, like what we say, like be prepared for those type of things. You should have a lot of scenarios outlined and just, you need to have that preparation to just kind of get ready for stuff like that. So while we don't know what price is going to do on a day-to-day basis, we can build that blueprint to understand what the overall context of price is. And when you're looking at structure, that's why I say structure is very important. Where did price close? Did we close above previous weekly? Did we close above previous daily or below? Right? And if we get those closes, do we get those continuations? Because remember, it's buy side versus sell side. So yeah, I know I said a lot there, but that's pretty much how I go about using those scanners, guys. Um, and I think they're really powerful, man. I mean, you guys saw a lot of the plays we did recently, right? Baba was one of the ones that I got from here, and I just went in and charted it, and it looked really good to do weeklies, and it played out very, very well, over 300% on Baba. And the reason we really liked Baba too at the time, whoops, wrong chart. Reason we like Baba 2 at the chart. And I don't know if you guys remember when we talked about this on Tuesday, but we said we wanted it to drill. I haven't changed this little thing since we charted it on Tuesday, but we said we want to maybe get a little drill down because this was the same. This is kind of like the same setup as Palantir, right? We had that explosive move, and we said if we don't get continuation, we want to see a little reset into the 4 hour before going higher. And that's exactly what it did. I haven't changed these little lines or whatever that we drew, the squiggles. And then we targeted outside week. Because when I was looking at this, right, if I'm going back on the weekly, when price was trading right around here, remember we talked about the 50% rule, right? But one thing I did on BABA was, okay, we were a potential 50%, but I correlated it with PDD, another name that was having a lot of strength. This went outside week and closed near high of week. So I said, if PDD is able to go outside week, will Baba be able to do the same? And when we were looking at this on Tuesday and we took the entry, we take it on Wednesday. We took it on, was it Wednesday? Yeah, we took it on Wednesday because it gave us that 4 hour reset that we had been looking for. And again, it might have not have happened. It could have just triggered up. But you see what I'm saying? It's important to build those blueprints. It's important to understand what price could do. Everything should be an if then statement. You shouldn't just look at a chart and automatically assume one way or the other. You need to build out scenarios and you need to understand context and the narrative of price. The reason I was able to say Baba is going to go outside weak is because PDD and a lot of other China ticker names did it. So if we're looking for laggers in that theme of China names going outside weak, Baba was the perfect candidate. And it played out perfectly. And when I look at this on a weekly scale, guys, this looks fantastic for a freaking swing. Look at all these explosive moves it's had down here, right? Look at the monthly that's setting up. Look at the 2 week. We got outside hammer 2 week. We got a 1-3-2 week that still hasn't taken out 81, can still push up an 81.73, then the mean threshold 85. Like when you look at PDD's weekly, you're telling me you're not trying to go long here? Look at the 2 week. 2 week almost went outside week. Look at the 1 week. 1 week went outside week. Monthly is a fail two down. The monthly has the potential to go outside month. Why are we not focusing on China names right now? Right? So that's kind of what I'm going at about here. So I don't mean to yell. I just get really energized. Like I had just there's a lot of passion when it comes to teaching you guys because I want you guys to understand everything. I want you guys to make sure it clicks. I wanted you to have that aha moment. Did anybody get that aha moment right now? It's okay if you didn't. Um, so so yeah, kind of going back to this, like that's the importance of all this. right? Like these are kind of these are the building blocks. These scanners are not, oh, I see a name on here, immediately take calls or puts. No, they're the building blocks to the foundation of how you're going to build your blueprint. And then when you do it, right, everything's on an intraday basis. And the reason, like, guys, don't feel, intimidated because of how fast I look at charts. That's not the purpose here. The purpose is to understand what I'm doing so you can get to that point. It's all really just repetition and experience. I've been staring at charts from open to close for the last what 3 years. That's all I've been doing. After I got, after I left my job at Lockheed, that's all I did for 2 years straight. As I just back tested, I just looked at charts, open to close, open to close, open to close. Because when you start seeing specific patterns, you're going to see how much they play out, and then you're going to start seeing them again and again and again and again. So when that scanner pops up and I'm going through all those different names, I'm just clicking one through one. So you got Palantir, NU, TSM, UPST, right? So that's what I'm doing. Palantir, UPST, TSM. I'm looking to see what has scenarios or patterns that I know have given me a probable edge. Because at the end of the day, that's what trading is. Trading is not something that's 100% guaranteed, but there are repeatable edges that can be favorable for your outcome. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much there is to be said on those scanners. Does anybody have any questions on them? Did that make sense? Did that help you guys understand? Do you guys need a little bit more clarity? I have, another 20 minutes or so if that's what you guys want. Um, but if not, there's also bot chat. I also use bot chat. I don't know if you guys missed that class, but let me populate that for you guys. Can you guys see the bot chat or is it not popping up yet? Technical difficulties. Let me see if this works. How about now? Okay, so this bot chat is literally also what I'm using. So apart from the ThinkorSwim scans, right? Like the ones you see above, we're also utilizing this on a day-to-day basis too. And I really enjoy using those potential outside weeks. So potential outside weeks, even though the week's already closed, it's not going to work right now. So maybe something we could do is potential outside months. And I'm using potential outside days, potential outside weeks. Potential outside days I'm doing after NYC lunch. So around 11 my time, Central Time, I'm looking for those IPO day, right? And around Tuesday, Wednesday is when I start looking for the potential outside weeks. And then the month, you can literally do whenever, just understand that earlier is not always the best. You want to maybe wait. So we're like first-ish week of August, we do already have a good chunk of names. So maybe it's important to pay attention to some of these because Costco, potential outside month, guys, with full time frame continuity. And what did we see on the scanner? What's also on there? Is Costco right up here? Yes, it is. Let's put our thinking caps on, right? So again, these are the building blocks to our foundation to understand the narrative of price. Costco's on here. Costco's also a potential outside month with full time frame continuity. Everything's aligning for Costco. Every single thing. So let's go chart Costco together just to show you what we would like to see. Okay, so again, relative to price, we are pushing into an area where price could reject, right? We took that last swing high to our displacement low. So there is a strong potential for Costco to make a lower high up here. But does the weekly say otherwise? We are pushing into a weekly OB, so we can expect some turbulence in between 857 to around 866, right? But now wherever this kind of opens up, what is the weekly going to have relative to the daily? What's going to be right here, guys? What was created by this displacement? Yep. So we know that there's going to be a lot of confluence for price too. Boop. So our entry comes if we get that retracement, right? And then when we populate the monthly, hide this out, fail two down on the month to potentially go outside month. There's a strong likelihood. I mean, if this happens, yeah, this would be nuts. But there's a good chance, right? Based off of the parameters that we know, we have full time frame continuity. All of our time frames are aligned. We have the positioning for it. We have the volume for it. We have the potential to go outside month because if we take that previous month and mark it all out, did we get a weekly close above the monthly 50%? Yes, we did. And now we have confluence. So the weekly shows something a lot more different than the daily. And this happened before too, right? You had that aggressive move down, price broke down, and then it's kind of very similar, right? The aggressive move down, and if you kind of draw it out, I mean, I'm just kind of making shit up right now, but you know what I mean, right? Does that all make sense to you guys? Like, this is why you use different time frames and you don't just get stuck on one, because the daily is now gonna have, yes. Yeah, so yeah, of course. So the reason we have this drawn out here is because remember, when you have displacement, you're taking into consideration three candles. And if I were to delete that initial middle candle, what would be there? Someone's got a hot mic, please. If there's a moderator in here, I cannot. Uh, uh, Someone's got a hot mic, guys. Come on, please be respectful. Who is it? All right, sorry, buddy. Thank you for that. So yeah, so if that middle candle didn't exist, right, and we were to remove it, you would have a gap, correct? So that gap is what's known as your imbalance, your fair value gap. Because of how quickly price moved through one direction, that imbalance is going to be waiting there to get restructured. And it's relative to the context of structure and order flow. So if we're going on an uptrend and we do push into it, is price going to bounce off that because of the unfilled orders? So what I'm getting at here is when the next weekly candle opens up, it's going to open up somewhere right around here, right? So if we remove this middle candle, do we have that gap between the first and the third candle, right? Yeah. So that's why I was talking about this scenario because when Monday comes in, Costco's going to open up somewhere around here. So there's going to be that really nice supportive imbalance of price where if we get something like this, I would like to see continuation. But Costco is actually a very, very beautiful setup. And oh my God, you almost got outside 2 week. Where did this stop? 857.90, 857.77. So you have relative equal highs as well in the 2 week to get taken out still. Does that make sense though? But we also know that relative to the daily structure, right? This is what we have to pay attention to is there is a scenario where this could make that lower high because we are right at the 618. So we want to utilize the weekly in our favor. So we know that there was a lot of price support here until it failed. So we want to see it do the same thing. We want to see it become that support once more. So maybe go ahead. That is a great question, and I'm glad you're asking. So, all right, guys, study sesh. When we have these overall structures, right, and we have a clean uptrend, right, for just practical theory, every time we make that higher low, you see price trade into, well, not every time. I don't want to, majority of the time, a good chunk of time, right? Because we know this is a repeatable edge, repeatable system. A lot of the times, those higher lows that get established are within the zero point 0.5 and 0.75 because the market is run by a lot of algorithms nowadays, right? And these algorithms are programmed based off of Fibonacci sequences a good chunk of the times, right? As Michael, Mr. ICT, likes to talk about. So if you have a lot of these programs, because the market is run by majority programs and algorithms, right? Everything's trying to get automated. When a lot of those algorithms are scripted to run and buy or sell within the 0.561875 relative to the structure of price, a lot of the times you'll see those higher lows come somewhere within. It's not always a 618. It could be anywhere within this realm a good chunk of the times. I just know that the 618 carries a lot more importance than the others because this is the founding father, if you want to, as the Fibonacci. All of your Fibonacci sequences are derived from the 618. So that's why it holds a lot more importance because the 786.5 all come from that. So when I invert this, the same thing can be said when you're making the lower highs. So you see why now we're looking at Costco and saying that that's where it could potentially reject and make a lower high because this was the swing high point for Costco. You made the new daily lows and now you're retracing back up. So if that's going to become a lower high, it will reject there and continue. And it's just based off of structural theory. So if I go back to Costco, you see what I mean? Does that make sense now a little bit? Because yeah, so this is where the lower high could establish. But now when we're looking at the weekly might say otherwise because we go outside week. The only thing is we are pushing into this OB. So the last up candle before an aggressive move down, and it's almost perfectly where it came, right? So you have it right around here. So if we go back into the daily, right? So now we want to see if price is going to mitigate all this because this was an aggressive move down. And now if we're really going to go for that outside month, we got a lot of work to do right up here. So I personally maybe like to see something like this and then get a reset and then go higher. Maybe like a little overshoot. Or if we get early weakness, we just want to make sure price does not fall back below like this 830. So I would make sure we all mark this out. This area here where we had a lot of good support. So if it does, I would definitely take a stab at price somewhere between 840s, high 830s if we get early weakness for potentially higher and target that outside month. So some 920, 900 calls on early weakness next week might be on the table. I just don't want to be a buyer up here because I know of the potential consequences. So you could still get that continuation though. Like it could just keep going and I would miss out because it would not meet criteria for me. And that's okay. But you guys see pretty much what I just did there. All in all, I literally used three things or two things. Scanner and the Discord. Whoops, still showing that. Right, just the scanner and the Discord. And then I just charted it. And I looked at all of the time frames and I built my building blocks. And does that all make sense still? Yeah, I can. I could do that quickly. So the main ones I'm just using, everything's pretty much just drawn out, but the main ones I'm using on the hourly and 30, and I've done a class over this, so you can also watch it. But whenever I'm looking for day trades and I can't really find an entry, I do enjoy using the 50 SMA on the hourly and 30. And so it's just the regular SMA one. And then I use the fair value gap because I'm too lazy to draw them all out. Meaning every fair value gap you see they're not all relevant. I like to base them mainly off of the higher time frames, but it's just good to know because whenever you see a wick, that's a fair value gap on another time frame. Something in case you guys didn't know. And that's pretty much it, like across all of them. And then on the 4 hour, I use this one by trading opportunity that he created. It's really nice because it labels out your previous month high, week high, day low, previous week low. But apart from that, that's pretty much it, man. I only use two things, and then the VRVP that I have on the higher time frames just because I like to see where that large buildup of liquidity could exist that could potentially support or reject price. But yeah, so VRVP, fair value gap, and the SMA. Those are literally the only three that I use. Because I mean, indicators are not meant to be there to tell you what's going to happen. They're more so to kind of automate specific things. And then the rest comes down to you. You don't want to rely on indicators because they all lag. But yeah, that's it. Everything else you see is just me drawing a bunch of things because I've charted a lot of names, and that's pretty much why you see that all there. Yeah. Yes. So I use it on the 4 hour and then the daily. The time frame that I have down here, this is the main one where I draw most of my blueprints or whatever, or get ready for price. I do a lot of my annotations on here. I also have it on the 4 hour, but I'm mainly looking for the daily and then the weekly is what I utilize the VRVP on. But I also have it on the 4 hour just in case if there's something I miss. But you want to use it more on the higher time frames because what it does is when I have my view set or whatever, it's extrapolating the data relative to how much time frame you're showing. So whenever I have it on a higher time frame, I'll get more data out of it versus the smaller time frames because it's only able to show maybe like a 2 days worth. It's not really important to me. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, so that's kind of why we were discussing, because uh, we are at a potential point of interest where price could reject or peak above. So for me personally, we were talking about that bottom of the range. So if I go back and illustrate it for you, right? I don't want it to be red. I just want it to be, whoops, how do I do no fill? That work? I don't know. So if price was kind of building here, right? And you broke below it, and then all of a sudden you come back in, rather than rejecting and continuing down, you come back in, and now you're somewhere around here where the overall target is these highs up here. I kind of want to see if price could continue to go, and that's okay. But for me personally, I would like to see confirmation of buyers. If this is going to turn out into an overall bullish sequence, I would like to see a reestablishment of that lower end and then go higher. So utilizing that on Costco, I would like to see if this does reject price. That's why we were saying some early weakness, and you see where we have just have a bunch of stuff marked out. I'm gonna close this all out real quick. But you see why we have these two areas here because this is where at one point price was very, very strong of buyers, and now we displaced through it. But now we brought them back. So I would like to see if this does not give the straight continuation because it does look like this was swept 857.90. Oh, it actually wasn't. Oh, perfect. So yeah, I would like to see maybe some early weakness, something like maybe like this, and then go higher. So if we're doing like, yes, yeah. So if we get that potential early weakness, I would like some like 900s, maybe 920s if you really want to go for it, or maybe a little bit something closer, because this is still going to be very troublesome Just the weekly looks very good. So I would like to see some early weakness, and then if we get some nice, then we relative to the 4 hour, whoops, if we get some nice hammer candles like this one you here see here, I would definitely be a buyer. Now, also one thing to take into account is if this is where we once had a bunch of sellers, right? Again, you could also do this, get that early pop and then use it as support and then climb higher. So as long as Costco shows me, like I don't have to get the perfect entry, but as long as Costco shows me proper correlation of price in regards to what it did before, right? Because we had a bunch of selling here that gapped us down. Now we came back up. So relative to that, I would like to see price, whoops, I'd like to see price build, you know, and then go higher. Relative to what it did here, I wanted to now do the opposite because of how strong we recovered it. So again, there's not gonna, I don't think the perfect entry in Costco will exist, but if you get a good chunk of time, I do think you can be a part of a really good run. Even if we're a little late, right? As long as price develops properly above, in my opinion, 840, 842, we have about $10 range to work with here, and then maybe we get that explosive move into like 880, potentially 900 as well. So that's kind of how I would go about it if I was trying to find an entry in Costco. So far, I really like the 4 hour. Now I just want to see it properly develop a little bit more. I want it to base and then go. I want it to really show me that this is going to be an establishment of buyers. Because look at, I mean, for one, look at the difference in this price action versus this. Reject, 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 dumb down. Now we're accepting and we're now, yeah, we're flipping this candle. Used to be this candle, but now we're flipping it. So that's already a good sign to me. Yeah, what's up? Um, I really don't figure it out. I kind of just try to find something that's not too far out of the money, but not too close to the money. Something that's kind of like, I wouldn't say affordable, but more so realistic. So like even though the target for Costco is a potential outside month, I would still do like we're right here at 850. I would still do maybe like 880 or something. You don't want to go too far out of the money because then you get killed by theta potentially if you don't get. Because remember, far out of the money is only beneficial if you see something pushing quickly and aggressively within a duration of time. But if you're very out of the money and something just continues to consolidate and take its time, you're going to lose value in those contracts very, very quickly. So out of the money is only beneficial if you see price pushing or aggressively making a move faster. And while you're at the money, it's not as hurtful. So I like to do something in between, at the money and out of the money. So I usually do like maybe 2 to 3 strikes relative to where my entry is. So if I get an entry around 840, I will probably do something that's 2, 3 strikes out, maybe like 860, 870. I don't know. It's really just relative to where price is at the time. But I usually like to stick to like 2 to 3. And again, when you do very far to the money, it should only be if you do see an aggressive move coming and quickly, not one that takes 2, 3 weeks to build out. Yeah, so we have been going for about an hour, guys. I do want to be able to post this recording. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so it's in pinned. If you go up to the top, pin messages, every single line of code that you want is here for everything. And there's a lot. So I would definitely play around. I mean, I don't really see many people use this channel other than a specific group of people, and I use it religiously every single day. Like this is where you can find a lot of really great setups. Like I'm looking at Shop Pen W, Z, GS. Like those are potential really good plays to do for outside ones. LLY was very strong. So yeah, but it's all here in the pin messages. Yeah, man. Appreciate everyone for coming on a Saturday morning. Thank you, Rose, for recording. Thank you guys all for the questions. I will post this recording sometime today. Um, so yeah, if you have any other questions, tag me in trading chat. But I do hope this was beneficial to y'all. I really do hope you understand why it is that I use things, how it is that I use things. That's all that really matters to me is more the why than the oh, that's a pretty scanner, I want to use it. Yeah, that's the whole point of this, man. Appreciate the feedback. Well, all right, other than that, I will end it there.